Welcome back. I hope that you had a great start last week. This week, we're going to be going over lessons 5 through 8 in level F. You will need your math balance. I'm just holding up the arm right now, so we're going to put it together later. Your math card games book, a dry erase board with marker, the activities for learning abacus, the short multiplication chart, the basic number card deck, and the multiplication card deck. All right, starting off with lesson 5. Notice the objectives and materials. We will be working with the math balance in a bit, and that is very fun. And we will also be reviewing how to write addition and multiplication equations. So first, there are some warm-up questions. Notice how the expected answer is in the parentheses. There could be more than one correct answer. And usually we list those, but sometimes we don't, and the kids come up with a unique answer or one that we just didn't think that they would. If you're not sure whether your child is correct or not, ask, how did you come up with that answer? Or can you show me how that would work on the abacus? Listen to the explanation and then decide whether or not it makes sense. For example, in the second paragraph of the warm-ups, the question is, what strategies can you use to find 8 plus 8? And the answer that's given is the 2-5 strategy because it's the most efficient strategy to use in that case. But your child could have said the make 10 strategy, and that would also be correct. So if he or she only mentions make 10, then I would ask what else could be used to make sure that they know that 2 5s is also an option. So if you've not set up your balance yet, let's get to it. All right, here is the math balance base. And I'm just going to put the vertical bar into the base. You just have to push a little bit. All right. Now notice there's a hole here. We're going to try to line up the hole in this base, in the vertical bar, with the arm. And sometimes it takes a little bit of effort. There is a pin that you just stick through and try to catch both holes. And then make sure you put the little white cap on the end. Okay, so there you have your math balance. You also have weights. Those can be hung. There is a 10G written on each one, so that means 10 grams, but you don't have to point that out or worry about them. They all weigh the same, and they just get hooked onto these hooks. Now, you also have these little counterweights. They're little white counterweights. You have 4 of them. My balance actually came to me quite balanced. I don't have to use the weights at all, but you may have to. So what you do is you slide the weight on here in the center, and you can move it along this plastic piece. You may have to put 2 on each side, 4 on one side, or the very worst situation is if you can't get it to balance at all doing that, then you may have to go out here and put it on the top and then slide it along to see what makes it balance. In any event, you definitely want it balanced before you start playing with it. All right. Next, you're going to lead your child to discover how the balance works. Notice how the book says to avoid giving hints. This is probably the hardest part for us as adults, is to just keep our mouths shut. But it is very important because even if it seems like it's taking all day for your child to get it, let the discovery happen. Because once you've given the answer, that magic is gone. So once your student has figured out how to make the balance, and that part probably won't take long at all. It's the next step that will. So you could just hand your child 2 weights and say, okay, when it's straight across, it's balanced. Can you make it stay balanced by putting these 2 weights on? And I would bet 9 times out of 10, your child will put them on the 10s, the farthest number out. And whatever number they put it on, as long as it balances, I'd say, great, good job, you did it. Now, the next step is what takes most kids a long time, even the older ones. So I would leave the 10 on one side, and I'd take the 10 off the other, and I'd give 2 weights to my child. And I'd say, all right, now you need to use 2 weights on this side, the one that doesn't have the 10 on it, to make it balance. Now that's when it might take a long time. Okay, but let them do the discovery because it's really fun. So once they can balance the scale with 2 weights and then 3 weights, then they can go on to see what makes 10. So have your student write down the addition equations on the dry erase board. And once all 5 equations are written down, you can then move on to multiplying on the balance. Continue following the directions in the book and often ask, why does that work? It's a useful question to ask as it gives the student a chance to solidify their understanding. The balance is a very fun tool to use, and most children will play with it a lot. I would encourage your child to practice many different solutions and to take the chance to be wrong, to figure out and then figure out how to make it right. So oftentimes we, as just humans, don't want to be wrong, right? We don't want to take that chance. But it's a really neat experience when they make a mistake and then they figure out how to fix it. Okay, don't forget the in conclusion part. It's a good way to check for understanding. And you can also play Addition War, which is A44 today. All right, so in lesson 6, we will be reviewing and practicing division strategies. Don't forget to use the abacus for the warm-ups if necessary. Remember, they have a tendency to not want to use the warm-up, to not want to use the abacus, and because they're not used to it. So really encourage them to do so, okay? Notice that we'll be introducing division through multiplication at first. So take a look at the first question. The first equation is 4 times 3 equals 12. Or you could say 4 taken 3 times equals 12. Then the question that's asked is, what does 4 mean? Now, if your student does not know the answer, have them use the abacus and enter 4 taken 3 times. And that should make it pretty clear that 4 is the size of the group. Now, regardless of how the question is answered, I would use those words to summarize the answer. I would say, yes, 4 is the size of the group, because this will help model how the answers should be given for the next question. All right, so which is, what does 3 mean? And the answer is how many groups or the number of groups. Okay, so the next problem uses the variable n in the equation 6 times n equals 48. So your student will enter 4, 10, 8 beads on the abacus and figure out how many groups of 6 there are. Now the book does a really good job of explaining how that is done, but there's many ways to do it actually, but we give you an example of how, probably the easiest way to do it. Okay, the game today is called Find the Two Factors, and it's number P29. Remember, P is for product, and 29 is the 29th game. This game does have a blog. Just enter P29 in the search bar on our website for more detailed information, or just look up the game in our Math Card Games book. Don't forget to sum up the lesson with the in conclusion part. Okay, moving on to lesson 7. The objectives are to learn the terms quotient and remainder, and to find the remainders after dividing. So after a quick warm-up of multiplication and division, we learn about remainders. Remember to give your student the short multiplication chart. It's a handy tool. Okay, your student will solve one problem 3 different ways. On the abacus, with the short multiplication chart, and on the math balance. Notice how the answer to the problem is more than just the simple arithmetic answer. You will need 8 tables, not 7 remainder 2 tables, because those 2 extra people need a table of their own. Okay. The game today is called Quotient and Remainder. It's D7 in the Math Card Games book, and it does have a blog. It will be the second game that comes up on our website when you enter D7. Okay, in the in conclusion part, there's an application of the information from today's lesson, but not a direct repetition of it. So it's a little bit more challenging. The review lessons are over now, and we are moving on to the meat of the program. Starting today, lesson 8. Today's objectives are to prepare to learn about check numbers, to find remainders after dividing, and to discover that those remainders from 2 or more equations can be combined. So in the last lesson, we introduced finding a remainder on the math balance. We will continue doing that today, but your student will combine equations and discover that they can be added together. Your student will then discover what happens if the remainder is equal to the divisor, such as 63 divided by 9 is 6 remainder 9. Well, once that happens, the remainder, 9, needs to move over to the quotient, right? So that the answer becomes 7 with no remainders. This situation can occur when combining equations or when doing long division and just being off by a number when calculating the quotient. All right, the summarizing section is preparation for lesson 11. And I'm going to show you an example of this. I need to switch the cameras again. It says, what is 21 divided by 9? So I'm going to write 21 divided by 9. I will turn this so that you can see it better in a second. 21 divided by 9 equals 2 remainder 3. And 10 divided by 9 equals 1 remainder 1. Now look at this nifty thing. I'm going to combine these 2 equations. And so that your student knows that we're combining, you could put a little plus sign here, although it's not exactly addition that we're doing for the whole thing. Okay, so 21 plus 10 is 31 divided by, we're not adding the 9s, we're going to just divide by 9, equals 3 remainder 4. So do you see how we could add the quotients that we got from the first 2 problems and get a 3, and the remainders from the first 2 problems and get a 4? Okay, that should be hopefully looking right for you guys. I think I found it very helpful to write this out. So even though it's in the book like this, I think it's really nice to write it out for your students so that it's very clear what's happening. Okay, and of course, they're going to be doing this after they've already combined equations on the math balance. So then for the end of today, go ahead and play the quotient and remainder game again. Let me go ahead and switch back here so I can see y'all. Okay, and amazingly, that's it for our second week. So I just wish you a lot of luck this week, and I hope that you have a very good and productive week. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.